The fourth issue is constitutional reforms. The lack of progress in implementing constitutional reforms, which have been extensively debated by various sections of the Ghanaian society, is an indictment on all previous governments. It is refreshing to note that the president has very early on in his administration empaneled a committee of very distinguished personalities, many of them known for their passion and commitment to the reform process. And equally important are recognized for their professional integrity and independence of thought. It is our fervent hope that their recommendations will not be buried within the corridors of power. It is worth noting that the GTP of the movement contains a comprehensive set of proposals for constitutional reform, including but not limited to the establishment of a government of national unity and the establishment of a second chamber of parliament, all with a view to promoting a more inclusive and decentralized governance architecture. And fifth is the economy. The Minister for Finance has indicated that he proposes to present the 2025 budget statement and government's economic policy by the middle of March. Whilst commending the minister for his efforts to meet the constitutional requirements of representing the budget before the 31st of March, the movement would like, among other things, to advise as follows. 1. The ministry must undertake a complete overhaul of the architecture of the national budget, focusing first on ensuring macroeconomic stability, anchored on the two pillars of fiscal consolidation and tight monetary policy, working in consultation with the Bank of Ghana. 2. Prioritizing catalytic investment in the investment in the productive sectors of the economy, namely agriculture, industry, and tourism, as against investments in social services and infrastructure development. 3. Providing a cocktail of fiscal and non-fiscal incentives to leverage financing and investments from the private sector, particularly to support infrastructural development in roads, bridges, water delivery and sanitation services. This should include attracting private sector participation in the full gamut of the energy sector, from generation, transmission, and distribution. It is worth noting that these policy measures will require a review of the current Exemptions Act, which is a disincentive to the attraction of private capital. 4. Negotiating with the independent power producers, IPPs, in the energy sector on a debt equity swap policy that will give them a stake in the private sector consortium that will partly own and manage the energy sector assets of government. 5. Abolishing some of the nuisance taxes, including the e-levy, betting tax, COVID levy, and fumigation levy, to replace the shortfall in revenue that will be occasioned by the removal of the above-named taxes, and to optimize government revenue in general. The ministry should effect an increase in VAT from the current 15% to 17%, but separate the calculation of VAT from the NHIL and GET fund in order to avoid compounding the calculation of the taxes and levies. The anticipated reduction in public expenditure arising from the reduction in the number of ministries and the number of ministers will contribute to closing the revenue gap. In addition, the aggressive efforts to reduce the incidence of corruption in public service will also save government additional revenue loss. 6. Retain the current 3% flat tax paid by MSMEs with a specified turnover and eliminate the additional 3% charge as distributors' margin. 7. As an expenditure control policy measure and to support government's fiscal consolidation efforts, review the implementation of all existing government flagship programs with a view not to discontinue them, but to reduce government's financial exposure to the programs and make them more financially sustainable. 8. Initiate the implementation of government's 24-hour economic policy, starting with enterprises under the One District, One Factory That's the 1D1F program. 9. The stabilization of the local currency is of the prime importance in maintaining a healthy economy. In this regard, whilst working towards a more robust and comprehensive medium to long-term solution, particularly in the area of boosting exports and enhancing import substitution, the ministry should introduce some short-term policy interventions designed to regulate demand and supply of foreign exchange. In this regard, government should suspend with immediate effect until further notice the operation of all forex bureaus and mandate all forex transactions to be conducted through the commercial banks and the Bank of Ghana. In addition, government existing regulations on the retention of forex from export revenue must be strictly enforced. 10. The Ministry of Finance should work with the Bank of Ghana to progressively bring down the central bank policy rate to induce and stimulate a reduction in interest rates. 11. The Ministry of Finance should work with the Ministry of Agriculture and Ministry of Trade, Industry and Agribusiness to introduce short-term policy measures to reduce food inflation, which will have a corresponding effect on reducing the level of inflation in general. 12. The government should review with immediate effect the taxes, duties, levies, and charges at the ports with a view to reducing same, which will be an incentive for enhanced compliance in the payment of duties and also contribute to a reduction in the level of imported inflation, since Ghana is still